You're remote, so I'm sure someone's showing the home, but how are you screening tenants versus what you're relying on your boots on the ground to do?
Being remote, you want to just be able to handle everything on the phone. You want to have that boots on the ground. You want to be able to handle the showings. I pay about $50 per showing per walkthrough. And when I mention walkthrough is a walkthrough of the potential tenant's property before they rent, just to see how it is they take care of the previous property that they're at. We've walked into places and it smells like weed smoke. It smells like cigarette smoke. They have 16 dogs. There's 17 people living in there, and that kind of gives you an idea, and it's just $50 well spent. I even go as far as radon and pest. I mean, just what's an extra $150 when instead of getting sued later on when somebody has cancer or finding out that there's bed bugs and you have to spend $3,000-$4,000 just to run fumes through the whole house. So just never cheap on the front end. But the property management has been a lot easier being remote, just as long as you have good people that can kind of tell you the good neighborhoods and where to stay out of, and you have some people that can help you kind of go and manage everything. It's a lot easier than just being there.
Can you share a recent project you did?
Just recently, we bought a property. I think it's worth about 80,000 ARV. We bought it for 54. We put 5 into it. Garage, everything nice. All we had to do was put some floors into it and paint it. We even painted the cabinets, not because they needed it, but because when we do the cash out refinance, you want the appraiser to find a little something that was done to the property. But that's not why I like it. I like it because I put a 67-year-old wonderful lady. Her name's Miss Robinson in there. She's a treat if you ever spoke to her. This is her forever home. She's never leaving. She's been on the Section 8 program for 30 years. So that means for the next, hopefully, 30 years or up until she passes, that's her forever home. So that means I will never have to do any turnover. I will never have to paint it. I will never have to do anything other than just make sure that she's okay. So to me, those are the best deals. Stuff where I can just put one tenant in there and not have to worry about it for 30 years. That to me is just the ROI that I like as far as peace of mind.
What is that 2-bedroom property to Mrs. Robinson renting out for, and what's your PITI on that deal?
$989. Right now it's cash, so we have another cash out refinance on it. I think taxes are about maybe like 110. Insurance is about 65 on it, and the taxes in that area 1.92% of 54,000. We put 5,000 into it, and it's renting for $989, and it's completely Section 8, 100% funded by Section 8. I think she pays about $35.
I love that you went through at least making the property nicer, because I think people fail to recognize that when you put a little bit more effort into the property, usually people have a little bit more dignity about living there, a little bit more pride about living there, and they generally try to return a favor because you're looking after them and they want to help look after the property that you own. Okay, welcome to the episode of Affordable Housing and Real Estate Investing. Today, we have Pablo STILL. And guys, this is why I'm excited to bring on Pablo, because he has helped other investors who might have been a little scared about getting started in this space, but he has really truly alleviated some of those fears because of his experience and some of the projects that he has already completed. We had one of his partners on the podcast already, Jake Dettinger. For those of you that have not heard it, please go back and listen to it. But today I'm going to bring on Pablo. Pablo, how you doing today, man?
Good, Ken. How are you?
Man, I'm fantastic. I'm really excited for the conversation today, just like I told you before this conversation, because I've talked to Jake and now I get to talk to you. And Jake talked so much about the partnership that he has with you. And I met some other folks who partner with you. So I really can't wait to get into the details today. But maybe for the audience today, Pablo, tell them a little bit about yourself. How did you even get into this real estate business in the first place?
Yeah, I want to just touch briefly. You spoke with Jake. I went back and I saw that podcast. That was nice. He spoke very kindly of me. So I had to call him after. I said, thanks for that. But I enjoyed that one. If you guys haven't checked that out, definitely go check that out. This started about 4 years ago. I kind of started my journey through real estate, and I kind of wanted to find what worked. At first, it was multifamily. At first, it was Airbnbs. And then I was fortunate enough to stumble across somebody that had a couple Section 8 properties. When he brought up Section 8, I said, well, what's Section 8? I mean, you kind of hear the stigma around it. Maybe not the best demographics. And I dove into it, and I started doing a lot of research, and I started finding, okay, this is actually something that's nice. Not only just guaranteed rents, just the amount of demand there is in the country for it. So I just realized, okay, this is something here. You can take advantage of a lot of housing that's still throughout areas that aren't as popular in the Midwest, in the Southeast. When everybody's going towards Orlando, Miami, Austin, San Antonio, you can kind of stay away from all that competition. So I definitely really liked it. It was kind of that blue ocean strategy for me. And that kind of is what kicked off the journey. And ever since then, it's just kind of been a roller coaster ride.
You mentioned a little bit about the stigma associated with affordable housing, Pablo. And with your experience so far, maybe let me back up a little bit. What were sort of your fears, if you had any, about affordable housing? And have any of those fears sort of gone away now that you've had some experience?
Sure. You hear the horror stories. You hear the people that ruin the properties. You definitely hear, how do if they have felonies, they're bringing other people into the property. But I learned over time, I mean, you can have that same outcome with just about anybody and about just any city that you have, whether it's government housing or whether it's luxury housing. So, the pros outweigh the cons for me when it comes to Section 8, and the risk was definitely worth the reward.
And that's exactly right. That's what I've been telling everybody. People can have parties at Airbnbs. People can have parties in long-term rentals, market rate tenants. I mean, it can happen anywhere. That's why the fundamentals of screening residents are so important and crucial to your success. So let me understand a little bit better. How did you even pick the markets that you even got started in? Because sometimes people are so lost and they don't even know where to even get started. How did you specifically kind of wind up at the markets that you're currently in?
Well, that's trial and error, right? You go and you get all the markets that you're familiar with. I'm in Florida, by the way, so I keep mentioning Orlando because it's so close to me. You go to Orlando, you go to Tampa, and you realize, okay, you can't really buy a $200,000 house and put a Section 8 tenant. You go based off the fair market rents online, and you realize what they're paying, and it kind of gives you an idea. It's not always perfect, but it gives you a kind of ballpark of where they'll end up paying. And you realize, okay, you can't really go to any of the popular areas, and that kind of brings you more towards the Midwest. Over time, it's shifted me more west, and then you start kind of narrowing down a couple areas. I like Ohio a lot. Ohio's getting a little bit more saturated, but I still have some parts in Ohio where I'm at. I'm still in Akron. I'm looking in Dayton. I'm looking more towards Missouri, Indiana. There's a lot of opportunity in Alabama right now, a lot of opportunity in Mississippi. So you start finding those pockets. You want to find houses that are under 100,000 preferably, and you want to find areas that are highly populated. You don't want areas around 30,000 population. You want to have enough demand and supply moving. So you can find contractors, you can find property managers, you can find realtors, you can find off-market properties, you can find on-market properties. You want to have all that. And slowly through just plain old trial and error, you start finding those markets.
And man, for the people that are listening right now, if you can't tell how much time Pablo just saved you from all that trial and error just by giving you some of the cities that he's in currently, hopefully everybody picked up on that, because it takes a lot of time just to even narrow in on where you want to or might want to focus on. Well, Pablo, for those folks that are looking in a market right now, how did you go about it? Did you first start analyzing deals and say, okay, this will work from a financial perspective? Because I really want to get to sort of a sequencing question. Do you believe that, hey, everybody should get a realtor, a contractor, property management company in place first and then start looking at it? How might you recommend someone to go about entering a market if they've never done this before?
Well, Ken, I mean, you know this better than anybody. We're fortunate enough to be in a business where you can get a realtor without any cost to you. So for you not to get a realtor, for you not to go and ask for help, for you not to figure out where the neighborhoods are the best, you're a sinking ship. When you go to a realtor, you're probably going to go through a lot of them. You want to find somebody that's a go-giver. You want to find somebody that's knowledgeable in the area. A lot of my realtors have 20 plus years of experience. They have some time on their hands, and you never want to sign an exclusive contract. You never want somebody to lock you up and put you in one of those, because then they get a little bit lazy after that. So you might have to go through a couple of realtors, but you'll find somebody that kind of works with you and kind of is what you need. You don't need them really to do anything other than just go there, take pictures of the property, and guide you with the right or wrong neighborhoods. Now, they'll never tell you which ones are the right or wrong neighborhoods, but you can kind of imply it. Do your own research as well. That's what I found most that I really need. I don't need anything else. I just need pictures. I just need somebody to go there, and I just need somebody to open up the door for the contractors. And after that, you want to find the contractors through realtors, through everybody else. I found an easy way to find contractors is go to the Home Depot Pro Desk in the mornings, very early in the morning, 6, 7 a.m., and just wait there. If you're remote, just try and find them through property management, either companies, realtors, or just people, other boots on the ground. But if you are there, go to the Home Depot desk and you will find plenty of contractors. Don't go there at 9 a.m. because there's little lazy ones. Everybody's there early. Once you go there, you kind of start going through people. You're going to get burned. You're going to have a contractor that doesn't show up on time. You're going to have a contractor that doesn't do a good job. You're going to have a contractor that maybe robs you. But over time, if you get past that initial learning curve and that initial hurdle, you're going to find a good one that you just don't want to let go. And that's kind of how it was with me. And from there, I found that all you need really is just a good realtor, a good handyman, and some boots on the ground. I find a lot of those through the sub 2 group. A lot of people in there, I've reached out to them, maybe pay them a flat fee of just going there, maybe doing a showing, doing a walkthrough, whatever you may need. There's a lot of go-givers in the community, is much better than anybody. And from there, that's about it. That's all you need. But for you to want to think that you can go and do this and scale in any place by yourself when you've never been there, you're in for a disaster.
Man, that's exactly what I tell everybody because sometimes we hide behind spreadsheets, for lack of better words. And we think, like, okay, if I put this number in this cell, this is what's going to result. And they always forget what I call is the execution risk. The execution risk, just like what Pablo said, is what if someone runs off with your money? What if someone doesn't complete everything on time? You might have a 3-month holding period, but all of a sudden someone runs off with 20 grand and now the deal is upside down. And this is why it's so important for you to take a tip like Pablo just disclosed, go to the Home Depot Pro Desk, and maybe you might just get lucky enough to find a good, reliable contractor that just simply does what he says he is going to do. That is what you really need to make a project sing on its own. Well, Pablo, maybe let's talk about property manager because that's usually a thorn in so many people's side. How did you find your property managers? Who are using in these markets, and how did you decide that they were good property managers, quote unquote?
So I found from up until about 20 properties, you really want to manage yourself. After that, you want to start finding somebody. And I say up until 20 because you need to know what are the ins and outs of property management. You need to know how to handle tenant disputes, maintenance issues. You need to know just what tenants are asking for and how to train a property manager. If you don't know how to do it, it's the blind leading the blind. And after about 20, you definitely want to hire somebody. We kind of go towards a university. We kind of go towards younger go-getters. We find that females are a little bit more organized, more patient on the phone. You definitely want to have somebody that has kind of a motherly instinct that can guide a lot of these potential Section 8 tenants. We have male property managers that work, not to say one works better than the other, but we find that more of a motherly patient aspect of it works a little bit better because you get a lot of people, Ken, and I'm sure you know, that don't know how the Section 8 program works. They just recently got a voucher. They just recently got their RTA packet, and all they know is that they just need to find a house. They don't know how much the Section 8 is going to pay for them. They don't know how many bedrooms they're allowed to get, and they don't know where to go. So if you have that knowledge and you're able to explain to them and guide them and say, okay, now you want to call here, you want to call there, now you want to have this packet ready for when you do the showing, and you can guide somebody, it's just that additional value that you can give that maybe another property management company just won't give. I found that the realtors can do a lot of the heavy lifting in the beginning for you. As long as you're buying enough properties for them that they're invested and they want to kind of protect all your assets, they're invested without having to pay the initial month fee that a lot of realtors charge. I never pay that. You never want to pay that. And if you do use a property management company, always negotiate that. They want to work with you and they want to get your properties rented because the quicker that they rent your properties, the more you can buy. So it's a full circle for them. And yeah, I mean, that and a virtual assistant really does wonders. You can get a lot done just from a phone and a handyman and a realtor.
Wow. So you talked a little bit about how you are able to keep your realtors busy so that, one, they stay incentivized, they continue to stay hungry. How many rehabs or rentals have you completed now for the Section 8 program?
I don't really do rehabs. If anything, it's a lipstick job. I don't want to get caught up, have my handyman caught up and behind because I need them for all the turnovers and all the small ones. We've done 25 properties. Just recently, with this last month, I think we're at 8 with another 8 in contracts. So really the slow buildup was just building the foundation. And now that it's there, we're on track to do about 120 to 150 this year.
Wow. And are these mostly single family homes? Are they smaller multifamily? What does that look like for your focus?
Fantastic question. At first, Ken, when I started off, I went towards the duplex. And I went towards the duplex because, again, you make the mistake of going after spreadsheets. And when you look at the spreadsheets, these duplex have 30 to 50% cash on cash returns. So it's kind of hard to shy away from them, right? But you make the mistake of realizing that a lot of the people that have a 4-bedroom Section 8 voucher have 3 kids, right? And they don't want to be on top of one another. So if they have free rent, if they have their choice to go wherever they want, would they want an apartment or would they want a single family house? So I really found that I wasn't able to rent those to Section 8. I found that I was only able to rent those to non-Section 8, and you had to drop the price just a little bit. There's still great cash on cash returns, but now you're dealing with tenant disputes. So now instead of being a landlord or a property investor, now you're a babysitter. Now he keeps the clothes in the laundry. Now he's parking in the driveway. Now, so is it really worth the extra 10, 20%? When I started, Kent, I was going after the bigger cash on cash returns. And I realized you make more by having less turnover, having less headaches, just by getting a nicer house in a better area, making slightly less cash on cash returns, but they will never leave. They will stay in your property for 20, 30, if not at least 10 years. Why would they leave if it's a beautiful property and there's less headaches?
Pablo, thank you so much for bringing up that point. I'm so glad you brought up that point because sometimes we do chase the numbers, especially if you're new and you're like, oh my God, this is a slam dunk deal, 30%. And then you realize you might not have valued your own time. right? If you value your own time at thousands of dollars per hour, and now all of a sudden for this 30% quote unquote return, you're spending a couple hours every single month handling disputes from someone complaining that, hey, this neighbor is being too loud, or they're always stomping on the floor upstairs. That takes a huge amount of energy away from you, and you can never scale if that's what you're spending your time on. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's a real life example that I hope everybody really takes to heart and really listens to what you just said there, Pablo, because it's not always about just chasing the highest return if you don't prioritize and value your own time and energy. Because why do we do all this for? Financial freedom, freedom of choice, time to spend more time with our family. You're not spending more time with your family when you're handling these disputes.
I'm not.
So, Pablo, it seems like you're moving towards single family homes now. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, so it's a fair assumption. Single family, I find rents faster, less people want to leave. And I find that it's just a lot easier to rent. It's a lot easier to sell. It's just a lot easier in general.
And is this across all of the markets that you're in currently, or are there still some markets where you're like, hey, I still want to go do duplexes?
I'll do a duplex. That's a good point. I'll do a duplex if it's a 2 bedroom up top and a 2 bedroom down below. I won't do a 3 or I won't do a 4 because there's plenty of 3, there's plenty of 4 bedrooms, single families. So people have their choice. Why would they go to a duplex when they have nothing but that? I'll definitely do a duplex if it's a 1 bedroom, because you cannot find a 1 bedroom single family house. It's very difficult. And there's plenty of people that have a 1 bedroom voucher that just get left behind because a lot of these investors, they just don't want to they can't get a return. It's not on them. They just can't get a return on a 1 bedroom single family house. So there's a whole entire waiting list all across the country in every county of just 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom vouchers that don't have a place. So I like to capitalize on those. They may not get the highest rent increases year after year, but the tenant will never leave because they can never find another place. And if you factor that into account with never having to do another turnover, your cash on cash goes a little bit higher.
Thank you. And I'm so glad we talked about the vacancy expenses, right? Because someone will eventually move out. It's just a matter of how often do they do it. And when it's empty, you're not making money and you have to spend money turning it over. So that could deplete sometimes even a whole year's of cash flow if you're not managing the property properly. So we talked about your buy box a little bit, at least on the property type. Is there like a specific square footage that you're looking for, Pablo, and any sort of proximity to school or proximity to public transportation? Tell us a little bit more about your buy box and how do you truly determine what an area or whether an area is good for affordable housing rentals?
It's pretty much all over the place. I mean, there's a couple of pros and cons, right? You want to have a lower square footage for turnover. But in the Midwest, it's not so much like the hot markets where the square footage affects the property value. So you can have a 1,500 square foot home cost the same as a 1,000 square foot home. But the turnover is going to be a lot more. But if you get the 1,500 square foot home, when all the prices raise in that area, your 1,500 square foot home is going to raise a lot quicker than a 1,000 square foot home. So if you care more about turnover, you care more about cash flow, I would go towards a lower square footage. If you care more about appreciation, care more about property value, then you definitely want to have a little bit higher property square footage and take advantage of the fact that just those prices don't really change. Section 8 doesn't pay you more for 2 bathrooms, but they rent a lot quicker. If they have another toilet, it rents tremendously fast, but they don't pay you anymore for it. So you want to stay away from what you call the spreadsheet paralysis and just, would you rent there? Would you put your family in there? Would it be convenient for you? And if you answer yes to all those questions, then you will rent it so fast and you'll never have an issue with vacancy or turnover. But I definitely like having something that's nice, something that's turnkey, but something that also screams homey. Nothing that's just, you get the stigma of Section 8 being, well, they just need a housing, they'd be lucky to live there. No, the better you take care of the property, the better you take care of them, the less money it's going to cost you in the long run. So I definitely learned that the hard way. So you definitely want to take care of the property. You want to put some nice flooring in there. You want to paint it up nice. You want to make it look good. I find that just some rocks in the front yard, just for the garden, will make it kind of give you that curb appeal that doesn't give you any return on investment, but really adds to that home factor that these tenants are looking for. But no, as far as buy box, as far as kind of what I'm looking for, it's kind of all over the place. As long as it's in a good neighborhood, it's not in a war zone, there's no shootings nearby, there's no burglaries nearby, and it's in a safe area, I find that I have no issue renting them, Kent.
Well, I love that you went through at least making the property nicer, because I think people fail to recognize that when you put a little bit more effort into the property, usually people have a little bit more dignity about living there, a little bit more pride about living there, and they generally try to return a favor because you're looking after them and they want to help look after the property that you own. Now, that's generally the case, not necessarily 100% of the time, but that's okay. Well, Pablo, when you're doing your rehabs, are you specifically doing painting and flooring almost automatically? Because you mentioned earlier you just want to go for primarily cosmetic jobs, but is that typically the rehab scope that you're going after?
Yeah, I don't always paint. I definitely send the cleaning ladies to kind of get rid of the smudge on the wall. So I don't always paint, but what I find, and I don't do this so much for cosmetic, but I do this for maintenance and turnover. I really like going after the 20 mil vinyl flooring. 20 mil is commercial grade. It's going to last you 25 years. You're never going to have an issue with it. So I won't spend the money, $300-$400 steam cleaning the carpet every single year and every single time there's a turnover, because it's just not worth it. And the quicker you put the vinyl flooring in, the less it's going to cost you. Now, when you're first starting off with a couple properties, just go buy it. Try and find it. I found it as low as $2 a square foot, which is that's a steal, Kent. And once you start scaling and eventually start scaling, go find a China supplier. There's incredibly good quality over in China, and you can get it for 50 cents a square foot. So when it comes to turning over these properties, I mean, you can get beautiful cabinets that look like a Miami house for $500. So it's not really about the cost, right? And keep in mind, this is going to last 25 years. And not only that, but it adds that wow factor that you're going to get the best tenant on the block. So when you have a house that's really nice, you're going to get the highest quality tenants with a great credit score, with a great track record and whatnot. So your cash on cash really goes up with the peace of mind factor.
Man, that is so smart. Well, you mentioned about flooring, sometimes painting. Are you hiring a GC to do all the work, or are you managing the subcontractors? Like you're calling the flooring guy, you're calling the painter. Tell us a little bit more about how do you manage the rehabs for these projects?
No, I've done well with just a handyman, just a kind of a jack of all trades. Does not have to be perfect, as long as he kind of knows what he's doing. And if he doesn't, just kind of calling some help. But the quicker you can make some friends, the quicker you can call out more people, the quicker you can talk to more people and let them know what you're doing and let them know you're a big investor and you're about to start buying a lot. Everybody wants to be your friend and everybody wants to help you out because they all want a piece of the pie. So I kind of found that just with one handyman can kind of get all this done. It's a little bit slower with one person. It's a little bit cheaper. It just depends on what you're going for.
So are you buying the flooring and sending it to your handyman or sending it to the property, and then you just tell the handyman to go over there to handle the renovation for you, quote unquote? Is that how you're managing the project?
Yes. I mean, up until the point where you can scale enough to where you can kind of just put one of the houses aside. I found that that's kind of the best is if you're buying multiple properties after 20, 30, and you could just keep one of the houses vacant instead of paying for a storage unit, just pay for the house and just pay the mortgage on it. And then just fill it up with a bunch of stuff that you don't need, whether it's washers, dryers, just kind of extra stuff. And it makes it a lot easier and convenient. But up until then, just send them to the store and just help them get everything. It's a little bit cheaper than just using one of the houses if you only have a couple at the time.
Got it. Well, who is your handyman and how did you find him? Was it really from Home Depot?
No, it wasn't from Home Depot. It was actually through one. Yeah, no, I was fortunate. It wasn't from Home Depot, but it was through one of the realtors. They were actually working on one of their houses and they had a nightmare contractor before. And they actually just mentioned this, hey, this guy's working out. So I ended up getting into a schedule. You'll find that if you want a good handyman, he's going to be busy and he's not going to have any time for you. And if he does have time, you don't want him because he's not good. And so the quicker you can get into a schedule and just start taking up his time block, and I have this handyman up until 4:30 in the morning, pretty much every night, just because I'm just trying to get into a schedule. Once he finishes with those other jobs and you can still kind of get in a schedule, take it over. And that way he never has time for anybody other than you. And then that's kind of how you end up getting a really good handyman all to yourself, essentially. But you just got to make sure that you keep him busy.
And this handyman is in the Akron market, or which market is he in?
Yes, this one's in Akron.
Okay, got it. And do you have handymans in other markets set up now, or are you still looking for them?
Yeah, I'm always looking. I mean, you can never stop it. It's just, the more people, the bigger team you have, the more opportunities you can chase down.
Got it. Well, I want to make sure people can bring value to you first, Pablo. If you are looking for a handyman, like what markets are you specifically looking for more help right now?
Nothing right now. I mean, just kind of Ohio area, maybe Alabama area, so Birmingham, Mobile, Alabama right now is pretty much it.
Got it. And do you use any like HVAC companies or plumbers or anything like that in any of your markets?
No, I don't like the companies so much. The companies are going to charge you an arm and a leg. I try and just find a tech, an HVAC tech, and I can go out there and just negotiate with them. Find the guy. You're going to get no a lot, but just find the guy. I managed to find an HVAC tech that could just go out there and inspect the furnaces for $50. And you're not going to find an HVAC company that's going to do that. So just kind of try and find the people that know you're an investor, know you're going to be bringing them volume, and kind of get that done that way. Find the inspectors, make sure the inspectors are aware of the Section 8 program. Reach out to the housing authority. It's not always the easiest to get a hold of, but reach out to them and try and just ask them questions. Hey, would you guys fail for this? Would you guys pass for this? Save yourself time, because the last thing you want to do is fail the first inspection. And now you have to wait another 3 weeks just to get an inspection again. I know right now in some of these hot markets, I mean, it could take 3 months just to get an inspection. So, that's 3 months of no rent. So just try and be friends with everybody and try and get a little bit of everything. You want to have cleaning ladies. You want to have a painter. Don't just rely on your handyman. If he's not available and you got to get a job done and you got to get somebody in there because they're moving in tomorrow. And just have a little bit of everybody. You want to have a GC. You want to have a roofer, a cider. You want to have a window company, a locksmith company. You want to just kind of figure out just a team. And even if you don't use them, as long as you have them in your contact list, make sure you have licensed people as well as unlicensed people. Just a little bit of everything.
Well, talk us through a little bit about the Section 8 inspection process, because you just brought that up. What sort of things have you, I guess, failed for? Anything silly or anything that people should be aware of based on your experience?
Yeah, definitely. When you're first starting off, it's not always on their checklist. You can kind of go to each housing authority's checklist, and each housing authority is different. Some fail for not having screens. Some don't care. Some fail for attic passing through a bedroom and they can't label it a bedroom. Some don't care. Some want you to even go as far as, if it's in the attic, they want you to have a ladder that somebody can throw out of the window, just in case, there's a fire, they have an escape route. Lately, they used to fail for the no closets. I found less and less housing authorities are failing for not having a closet in the bedroom. I don't know if that's nationwide or whatnot. But very simple stuff. I mean, GFIs, they're the big ones. So the first thing the inspector goes and checks out. You want to make sure that everything's clean. The faucets aren't leaking. I mean, as simple as just the bathtub stopper at the bottom. The sink, you want to make sure that, just basically the way I can put it is, everything that should work works. That the cabinets close in easily. I mean, just go above and beyond. What I really like is I started off with Section 8 and it kind of set the standard for just how a house should be for any tenant, whether it's Section 8 or not. It's the bare minimum of what a house should be.
I love that you worded it that way, because that's truly how it should be. I mean, if you want to be a good landlord, you have to take care of your residents, because if they have a crappy experience living in your place, chances are they're going to look for a way out ASAP. And then all that work you spent into acquiring the property and renovating the property, it might be resulting in a loss because you didn't do the upfront work. And for folks that are maybe looking into this program some more, where are those housing authorities that might be taking 3 months for a inspection?
Man, I've heard horror stories. I'll give you Birmingham right now is a mess. I know you mentioned you have some in Birmingham. I don't know firsthand experience, but I know Birmingham. I know I know Cleveland right now is pretty backed up. It's the big areas. I mean, Cleveland has 600, 500,000. I think it's 400,000 people. Birmingham County has like 600,000. So I mean, it's not their fault. It's just a lot of demand, but just be willing to allocate those funds to not having any money coming in for that time, and really know your inspections so that you don't have to fail more than once.
Right. Not only do you want to plan for those holding costs, but any chance or any opportunity you have to have someone by the side of the housing authority when they're doing that inspection, so you might have a chance to correct it. Because the last thing you want is to wait 3 months for an inspection and to fail it, to wait another 3 months for that inspection. And that can be really, really brutal. Well, Pablo, what property management company are you using right now for some of your properties?
I'm not using any. It all depends on the person, right? I know I'm scaling. I know I'm going to get there quick, so there's no point for me to use one. It's very hard to find one. I'll say politically correct. It's very hard to find a property management company that will care about you and do a good job. I'll give you an example so your audience can kind of understand. If you have 2 properties and this property management company is managing 300, 500 properties, and some of their biggest clients have 100, 200 properties, and they get a grade A tenant, where is he going? Is he going to the client that has 2 properties? Or is he going to some of their big clients? So that's just one aspect. Let's say for you, if they stop paying you on the 5th and nobody's answering the door and they're not paying and you want to evict, you want to start eviction process. This company doesn't want to start eviction process until the 15th. That doesn't really work for your timetable, because now if this guy never pays, you're not going to be able to get somebody out. You're not going to be able to even send a 3-day notice until the 15th. And it just messes everything up. So there's a lot of stuff that I don't agree with property management companies of today. Not to mention, when you used some of their people, they upcharge you like crazy. So you really want to find your own team. Don't take the lazy route. Find your own team, find your boots on the ground, and build it up, because it's worth it. Now, if you only have 1 or 2, I mean, you really have no choice. But the best thing would do is find an individual person instead of a property management company that really knows the area. But you should really still know everything about it, because you just don't know when you're getting played. I find that a lot of these property managers, they're not aware of what Section 8 is paying, even in their own city, and it's an argument you'll never win. I've been here 30 years, and Section 8 will never pay that for a 3-bedroom. And meanwhile, you have 5 of them paying that and above. So it's, just don't listen to everybody. Do your own research and kind of, trust yourself before everybody else.
That is so interesting. So you're having your own team, sort of property manager, you're self-managing it. Tell us a little bit more about what is sort of the role you're playing. Are you screening the tenants? I mean, you're remote, so I'm sure someone's showing the home, but how are you screening the tenants versus what you're relying on your boots on the ground to do?
Yeah, I'll give you a bigger background, Kent, that even you don't know. I'm completely paralyzed from the chest down. So I'm in a wheelchair. 4 years ago, I was in an accident that left me completely paralyzed. So I have no choice to be remote. And it was one of the best things that ever happened. Never been to Akron, never been to any of the other markets. And that's been the best thing that's ever happened. Because I find that when you're there, now when you're seeing the property, well, all of a sudden that property needs a little bit more loving care than you would if you were just a little bit further away. And once you're there, you kind of see the chip paint on the door and you say, okay, well, maybe we should paint that. Now you can't scale because now you're focused on only seeing one. When you're further away, it's actually more of a blessing because it's more of a bird's eye view. Now, with being remote, you want to just be able to handle everything on the phone. You want to have that boots on the ground. You want to be able to handle the showings. I find that I pay about $50 per showing. $50 per walkthrough. And the walkthrough, when I mention walkthrough, is a walkthrough of the potential tenant's property before they rent, just to see how it is they take care of the previous property that they're at. We've walked into places and it smells like weed smoke. It smells like cigarette smoke. They have 16 dogs. There's 17 people living in there. And that kind of gives you an idea. And it's just $50 well spent. Never cheap out on that. Never cheap out on the inspection. I even go as far as radon and pest. I mean, just what's an extra $150 when instead of getting sued later on when somebody has cancer or finding out that there's bed bugs and you have to spend $3,000-$4,000 just to run fumes through the whole house. So just never cheap out on the front end. Never be afraid to get out of a contract. I know in the beginning I always was, oh, okay, well, the realtor did the job. Oh, we already told the listing agent we were going to buy it. Oh, well, now I feel bad. Now I'm already $500 in. Just get out of it. You know, I've almost bought houses, Kent, that are pretty much leaning to the side, kind of like the leaning Tower of Pisa. And just because, well, how bad can the foundation issue really be? Just to not make everybody uncomfortable and back out of the deal. But just never be afraid to back out of the deal. But I'll digress to just saying that the property management has been a lot easier being remote. Just as long as you have good people that can kind of tell you the good neighborhoods and where to stay out of, and you have some people that can help you kind of go and manage everything, it's a lot easier than just being there.
Wow. So do you typically have the walkthrough you mentioned? You usually have your realtor do that, your handyman do that. What does that look like from an organization standpoint?
Anybody that wants to make $50 and can communicate. There's no requirements. Just walk in, just say, hey, would you rent to them? Would you let them stay in your house? It's pretty much it. They don't even need to take pictures. They don't even need to take a checklist. Just say, hey, what'd you think? You know, just a couple holes here, you know, just some laundry somewhere, you know, a little bit of food on the, okay, but overall, is it affecting the property? No. Okay. All right, cool. You know, anybody knows what smoke smells like. You know, anybody knows what 16 dogs looks like. So there's no real qualifications. For the showings, you just need to show up and open the door. I mean, it's the easiest $50 somebody can make, but it's the easiest $50 you could spend because you don't have to be there. So just really anybody with a pulse.
I love that because this is how you can get creative about how you manage your team, because some folks might be really afraid of even getting to this because they're like, oh, I heard it's so hard to find a good property manager. And Pablo was just the perfect example of how you can get around that with the right systems and the right people. Sure, it takes a lot of effort to get that set up and build your team out properly. But Pablo, I love what you have done here so far because you didn't make any excuses. You said, let me just go get this thing done. And here you are with 25 plus rentals here in the Section 8 program. And
if let me add something to this, Kent. If your goal really is to scale, like I know our goal is really to get to a point where we're acquiring 1,000 a year. You need to know all of this. You need to know every aspect. You need to know everything about your business because you can't train and you can't duplicate. And if you can't train and you can't duplicate even one person, then they can't train and they can't duplicate their two people. And it's a compounding effect. The more you learn, I mean, it's a huge learning curve like anything that you do. But the better you know it, I mean, the better you can train people. And if your goal is to scale, I mean, it's all about the people that you have. It's easy to buy a property. It's the easiest thing in the world to buy a property. It's the easiest thing in the world to raise money. I mean, these are stuff that, you know, once you get to a point, and for some of you that haven't started yet, it might seem like a nightmare. But you know, once you get on that roller coaster, I mean, you'll find it's a breeze to do that. What's hard is management. What's hard is hiring. What's hard is training. That's the hard part. And when you can really zone in and take care of those and get those out of the way, I mean, everything just becomes scalable and it becomes a system after that.
And well said, Pablo. And this is the part where, all right, you shared so many tips, so many gems about how to do this, even the cities where you invest in. Let's kind of talk through a deal you really did that can kind of tie this all together. Can you share a recent project you did, like what the property type was, what you buy it for, what you thought you were going to renovate it for, and what was the actual rehab cost, the PITI, and net cash flow? Let's go through some numbers.
I could share a bunch. I mean, we mainly stay on market. We don't really go off market, not because we're against it, but just because there you could just scale quicker just going on market than try and find off market, and you have your choice of where to buy. We've done sub twos, we've done the seller finances. Those are obviously killer cash on cash returns, and those are great deals. My favorite deals right now are the 2 bedrooms. The 2 bedrooms right now because one, they can't sell them. The only person that the seller can sell it to is a home buyer, because it never makes sense to sell it for what the property should be sold for. If it has 1,000 square foot and it should be sold for 85,000, you can't sell it for 85,000 because nobody will ever cash flow. So when you come in, you could buy a property for $50,000 cash, and it's a 2 bedroom, and you could put just $5,000 into it and rent it for $1,000. It's got an amazing cash on cash return of about 30%. But that's not why it's exciting to me. What's exciting to me is because you will have a list of people fighting over it that has a 2 bedroom voucher, that are used to only having duplexes available to them, that want a single family house and will never leave for the next 30 years. Just recently, we bought a property. I think it's worth about 80,000 ARV. We bought it for 54. We put 5 into it, garage, everything nice. All we had to do was put some floors into it and paint it. We even painted the cabinets, not because they needed it, but because when we do the cash out refinance, you want the appraiser to find a little something that was done to the property. But that's not why I like it. I like it because I put a 67-year-old wonderful lady. Her name's Miss Robinson in there. She's a treat if you ever spoke to her. But this is her forever home. She's never leaving. She's been on the Section 8 program for 30 years. So that means for the next, hopefully, 30 years, or up until she passes, that's her forever home. So that means I will never have to do any turnover. I will never have to paint it. I will never have to do anything other than just make sure that she's okay. So to me, those are the best deals. Stuff where I can just put one tenant in there and not have to worry about it for 30 years is just, that to me is just the ROI that I like as far as peace of mind.
I love that story. Well, let's get into the actual numbers. What is that 2 bedroom property to Mrs. Robinson renting out for, and what's your PITI on that deal?
$989. Right now it's cash, so we have another cash out refinance on it. It's I think taxes are about 100, maybe like 110. Insurance is about 65 on it, and the taxes in that area about 1.92%. So excuse me if I don't have that number correct. So 1.92% of 54,000. We put 5,000 into it, and it's renting for $989, and it's completely Section 8, 100% funded by Section 8. I think she pays about $35. And even if we'll touch base on this for people that don't know, Ken, I know you know, but I'll touch base on this. When it comes down to what Section 8 pays and what a tenant pays, most people have the misconception that is basically Section 8 will always pay for all of it. No, that's not the case. It goes based off income and it goes based off dependence. And from there, they decide off who to pay. So it goes based off of income and dependence, right? So they never want the tenant to exceed 40% of their current income. So if a tenant's making $1,000, they will never approve a rent higher than what the tenant can afford. What we like to do is we like to come in, let's say the fair market rent is $1,300. In this case, it's $1,141 for that area. And because that area is actually an opportunity area, where Section 8 will actually pay 110% of the fair market rent. A lot of those areas, Ken, are just areas that, some tenants can't get into because they're just a lot more expensive. But a lot of those areas are still doable for purchase prices. So that area is actually in one of the opportunity zones. So they're paying 110% of the fair market rent. So what happens is you take 1142 and you minus the utilities. And from there, you can see what kind of somebody will pay. Now, the utilities in that property are $280. Well, she makes $1,200. So she can go up to about $480 of her income. So they were able just to take it up just a little bit higher. But if you had somebody that had no income, you wouldn't be able to take it up higher. So you would take the 1140 and you would minus the 280, and that's pretty much the max that Section 8 will pay. Now, we always like to try and supplement it by, renting a washer, renting a dryer, renting, the lawn service, whatever you can to kind of raise up that rent. They might be okay with renting a washer and dryer, and all that depends, all that varies on what you would rent that by market to market. But we find that's kind of how the housing authority kind of gauges price. And for her, they accepted $989, and they're paying pretty much all of it. And she's paying about $35.
I love that. Hey, what has been your experience with asking for rent increases? What kind of pushback have you faced before, and how have you handled any issues if you have seen any issues?
Yeah, as long as you can provide some comps, and as long as you show that there's some areas that are renting for that, they shouldn't have an issue. And again, it really just comes down to the income and the dependence. As long as you're doing it about 90 days before the lease ends and before the recertification, you really should never have an issue.
And Pablo, this has been such a great conversation, man. I'm so grateful that you came on, and I'm so grateful that there's people like you out there that is working on these projects specifically, because without people like you, I would have never had the home I grew up in. Pablo. So for that, I truly thank you. And for folks that want to get to know you a little bit more, Pablo, or want to get in touch with you for future projects, where can they find you?
Ken, let me just add some closing statements when it comes down to Section 8 and why, some people are kind of on the fence on whether they should jump over or not. In this market right now, where the interest rates are where they at, if you're not getting a sub 2 deal, if you're not getting a seller finance deal, you're not getting a deal. I don't care where you are. And it's impossible to get anything in the popular areas. At the time, at the height of the market, by the height of the market, I mean the height of the interest rate market, just a couple months, 9% interest rates with a DSCR loan, we're still getting 30% cash on cash returns, 25. So no problem. So as far as the opportunity right now, if you're stuck and you can't get a deal and you can't find a deal in your hometown or you can't find a deal, check out the Midwest. Check out some of these opportunity zones. There's so much demand. There's a wait list of 20,000, 30,000 people. I know Miami has a wait list of 12 years for these Section 8 applicants. And they're the best tenants in the world. Are you going to get some that kind of speak louder, are more loud than the good ones? Yeah, sure. But if you know how to screen, if you could screen them correctly, if you can go through the criteria, if you can make sure that they have good credit score, and by credit score, it's never going to be a 700, it's never going to be a 600, but you want to make sure that they don't have many collections. You want to make sure that, they make payments on time. You want to make sure that you get a landlord reference from a previous place. You want to make sure that they have an employer reference. You want to make sure you do the walkthrough, and you want to make sure that they have the Section 8 voucher. And, that overall, that's pretty much the only criteria we go after. It's all context based. You want to make sure that they don't have an eviction, at least within 6 years is what we look at. And they don't have, major violent felonies, and they don't have really bankruptcies. They're not perfect tenants, but they will make it worth it. They don't leave. The turnover is a lot less and the vacancy is a lot less. And I don't know where you can go in this country where you can kind of have an idea within 10% of what you will get paid for rent, how many people are looking for this housing, and just the sheer demand that there is in this market. So for those of you thinking of doing it, I highly encourage it. It's wonderful. It's not the house that's the asset. It's not the market. It's the tenant. And as long as you get a good tenant, it makes life easier.
Man, thanks for being so inspirational, Pablo. I love what you're doing. You made no excuses. You got things done, and you just worked through it. You knew it was going to be hard, but you stuck with it. And I can understand why you're so successful today and why you're so inspirational. So I want to give you an opportunity to tell people a little bit more about you. So where can they find you, man?
Yeah, just my phone number. If you have any questions, if you're interested. Like I said, we're scaling pretty heavy this year. So, I'm always looking for more partners, more private money lenders. And I'm always here to reach out if you guys have any questions. I don't know if can they see my phone number on the screen?
You can. We can stay it for the audio if you like.
Yeah. Okay. 561-685-8069. Just shoot me a text. That's probably the easiest way of communicating with me.
Nice. And for those of you that might be listening in the car, you can always watch this on youtube.com/@Kent_HE. And you would see Pablo's number out there. So I hope you all blow his phone number up. Reach out to him if you have any deals. And Pablo, hey, hopefully we'll bring you back on for another conversation in the future, man.
Cool. Looking forward to it.
And we are out.